Any jerk today is going to come and tell you about what happened last night. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen headlines there where Francis Ngannou is stripped from the UFC Championship. Ciryl Gane versus Jon Jones. Like, these things are of interest, kinda. Right, I mean, there's some real moving parts there. Those are of interest, kind of. Let me just give you a scenario. Dana White sits down. Dana White says, Ciryl Jones, undisputed championship in March. And he gets up and he walks away. If he said nothing else but that, Ciryl against Jones, undisputed title, right? Just in that, we are now going to know Francis was stripped. We're going to know the negotiation that has played out in front of our eyes for a year was unfruitful. But we're also going to know that we got a big problem with Stipe Miocic. We're going to know that we got a big middle finger put into the face of Curtis Blaydes. And that's where the real interest of this is. I mean, one fight that you guys have never called for. One fight that was not being sought after and asked for, and please don't be the jerk that goes, I asked for that, Chael. Go check my Twitter account. Come on, you know what I'm saying here. Broad stroke, we as an industry have never called for Ciryl versus Jon Jones. Never, not once. We never heard rumors of it. We never speculated around it. That just wasn't the dance to be done. We had a round robin going with three guys. Jones, Stipe, Francis. Those three guys have gotten up in the loft and pulled the rope up behind them so nobody else can get there. And they've done this for over a year. And no heavyweight has broken through, but no heavyweight has attempted to break through. No heavyweight got rumors or reports or headlines that they were going to interrupt that little three-way. So it's a very big deal that we're now got Ciryl and Jones, not just because we stripped Francis, not because Francis is going to move on. What does it say about Stipe? And I'm asking you guys that question. You're not going to have an answer for me. You're going to have a guess. One thing Stipe doesn't do a great job of is communicating with us. We, the community, don't really know what his temperature is at all times. Stipe had told us, and one of the last things that he's told us, is that he was going to put on 20 pounds. And it's really relevant because it's a really good story. Like Stipe versus Francis trilogy, that's an awesome storyline. And it's a storyline that nobody started to tell. Now, Stipe knows it. Stipe knew it in his mind, but he felt it in his heart too. Hey, I belong in there with Francis. I beat him. He beat me. We go to part 3. That's the way this is done. Stipe's right. That's the way that's always been done. But there's certain things that you have to do to get a rematch or to even get a trilogy match. There's certain ingredients that have to be there, and they weren't there. Now, Stipe, absent of those ingredients, went into training. He put on the size. He curled the bar. He climbed the rope, whatever you got to do to put on 20 pounds, because he thought he was going to be in there with Francis. Now, you see where this gets interesting, right? Francis is no longer an option. And there's a massive lesson that has to be learned here. And we don't learn them in this sport. I attempt to identify them and explain them to you so that you can learn from them. But we don't ever learn. We don't ever observe what's going on in our own sport. We all have a sandhagen to a degree when it has to do with our own career. We just can't see. And the massive lesson here is that if you're Stipe, if you've passed up on fights, if what we, the audience, have been told is true, which in fairness, we really don't know, because he's never confirmed it. But if we're to believe what we're told is true, which is Stipe has been offered Jon Jones, he was offered interim championships, and he passed those up. If that's true, do you see where it is very unlikely that you can get Stipe in there with Curtis Blaydes? If you couldn't get Stipe to agree to fight Jones in a main event for 7+ figures and a potential world championship, if you couldn't do that, do you now reasonably believe you can get him in there with the only guy that's left, which is Curtis Blaydes? No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't believe you can get Stipe on free TV, and you don't believe you can headline a pay-per-view with a non-title heavyweight match between two guys who have never said each other's names. You don't believe any of those things. And you know for sure you're not getting Stipe in a co-main spot. So now you're left with, what do you do with Stipe? And before you think you have to answer the question, perhaps you don't. Perhaps you don't. Perhaps you did answer it. Perhaps you answered it over the last 16 months, which is you don't do anything with him. You might have just retired him. That's a very real possibility. That's a very real potential fallout of the announcement of Jones versus Ciryl. When you start to lay down what you would actually hedge a bet on. You know Jones and Ciryl, so you know Francis is out. You know Stipe didn't get the Francis fight, which he put on 20 pounds of muscle because he absolutely wanted to do. You see the pieces that have come off the board. You saw an interim title shot that now doesn't exist. You saw an undisputed title shot that is now spoken for. What do you do with Stipe? Do you weight him and he takes on the winner? Maybe. That'd be fresh blood. It'd be new parity. There isn't a whole lot of guys that can fog a mirror in that division and be recognized by the audience. Maybe you do. But now you're talking about 2024, or at least getting close to 2024. It's pretty unrealistic. I don't think he's retired. I don't think he's forced out. I don't think he's done. But I do think he's retired, he's forced out, and he's done is every bit as possible as he's going to wait till almost 2024 to take on the winner of Jones and Ciryl. I do think it's just as possible as he's going to go do a co-main event somewhere against Curtis Blades. They're all tough sells, but it's really not about what that announcement was. The bigger news is what that announcement left out